Xiongju behind him dropped to his knees in gratitude. He thanked him with teary eyes, swearing never to forget the favor, while Kim Yao could hardly believe what had just happened. Cheon Do-woon had purified demonic energy by injecting mana, something thought to be impossible without an overwhelming amount of power. After witnessing the impossible, a single thought echoed in their minds: just who exactly is Mr. Cheon Do-woon? On the other hand, Cheon Do-woon walked steadily with a large pack strapped to his back. His expression was calm as he let out a thoughtful hum, lost in his own thoughts. Cheon Do-woon arrived at his small wooden home, relieved to see that no intruders had disturbed it. He looked at it fondly. He thought it had been a satisfying outing, especially since he had gained some unexpected income. Cheon Do-woon glanced at the small mandragora tied to his waist who had waken up. Seeing its drooping leaves, he wondered if the long journey had worn it out. Cheon Do-woon knelt down in front of his small home, carefully planting those mandragora into the soil. As he worked, he thought to himself that this much should be enough. But as the small mandragora swayed in the soil, their faces gloomy. They let out low, unhappy sounds, clearly showing their dissatisfaction. MC noticed the little mandragora unhappy expression and frowned. He wondered aloud what they didn't like. Maybe they are upset because their home had been moved by force. Then, thinking further, he guessed they might be hungry from being carried around without soil. Cheon Do-woon reached out his hand, letting a soft blue glow of mana flow from his fingertips into the soil, asking little mandragora, shall he give them some mana because they usually enjoyed it. The little mandragora began to glow with joy, happily responding to the mana they had received. Watching this, Cheon Do-woon remarked that they seemed more at ease now. But Cheon Do-woon suddenly sensed something unusual. Narrowing his eyes, he thought to himself, this presence, it feels familiar. Cheon Do-woon realized that it's the robot the hunters have been chasing. It was a small mechanical creature, clutching branches as if to camouflage itself. Confused, MC wondered, what business does a machine like that have with me? Cheon Do-woon decided not to overthink it. Calmly, he thought to himself that, well, if it really has business with him, it'll show itself sooner or later. Cheon Do-woon glanced at the stack of money and thought to himself that there was no rush. He would keep it aside for now and only use it when he truly needed it later. Then he sat inside the wooden cabin and unpacked those hunters' backpack. Inside was cooking pots and many supplies. He looked down at them and thought to himself that it was time to organize the luggage he had brought. Cheon Do-woon began checking through his belongings one by one. He had a portable burner and a cooking pot set, perfect for outdoor cooking while hiking, camping, or fishing. There were also 8 gate stones, items that allowed free travel between the human world and the demon realm. He pulled out some spare clothes, though they were contaminated with pollen and needed washing before use. Lastly, he had 2 sleeping bags and a blanket, essential for staying warm at night. Seeing all of this, he thought to himself that those hunters had come very well prepared, which was definitely a good thing for MC. Cheon Do-woon picked up a red packet and realized it was ramen. A wave of nostalgia hit him, as he wondered if the last time he had eaten it was back when he was a child living in the orphanage. Cheon Do-woon smiled as he held the ramen packet in his hands. Feeling the hunger in his stomach, he thought it was the perfect time. With a spark of anticipation, he decided to try cooking ramen. Cheon Do-woon read the ramen recipe, which instructed him to fill 500 milliliters of water. Standing by the river with a pot in his hands, he wondered if he should just estimate the amount by weight. As Cheon Do-woon stood by the river with his pot, ready to collect water, a sudden splash broke the surface. Fierce-looking fish with sharp fins leapt out toward him. Cheon Do-woon, who held the pot of water, remembered that people usually add extra ingredients when cooking ramen. He thought that ramen would taste delicious with fish, and so strike with finger, killing the fish instantly. The recipe suggested adding ingredients like eggs or green onions for better taste. Cheon Do-woon noticed some roe and thought it should be fine to use as a replacement for eggs. Since there were no green onions around, Cheon Do-woon decided to use some other greens he found, thinking it would work just as well. Cheon Do-woon finished gathering all the ingredients, placing them into the pot. With everything ready, he decided it was time to head back. As Cheon Do-woon walked back with the pot in hand, a metallic foot appeared behind him. It was the little robot, which stared in awe, its glowing eyes wide and leaves rustling faintly on its head. Holding its stomach as if overwhelmed, it muttered in disbelief, "That man is cooking." Cheon Do-woon lit the fire under the pot, carefully watching the flames rise. As he glanced at the instructions, he frowned slightly, realizing they didn't mention when the fish should be added. Cheon Do-woon stood by the wooden table he had just crafted from a log moments ago. Looking at the pot, he shrugged and decided, I guess I'll just boil it all together. as he tossed the ingredients in to cook. But as the smell of his cooking loomed over nearby mandragora, their tiny bodies trembling, they twitched uncomfortably, smelling the strange scent. The strange scent drifted through the air, winding its way past the trees as the sunlight filtered through the leaves. The little robot caught the drifting aroma, its sensors twitching as drool leaked from its mouth. "Cooking smell," it murmured, clearly drawn toward the source. "I want to eat it too." "How?" it muttered, its steps following the trail despite knowing it wasn't built for such desires. Its memory stirred, tying the present scent to something once glimpsed long ago. Its body transformed because it saw it in the lab that humans like dogs and humans help if they felt pity. So it transformed into a pitiful-looking dog, whose one leg is injured. Robot let out a soft whine as it approached. Cheon-dawoon, sitting at the table, glanced over with a puzzled expression. He remembered that this mechanical creature has been following him ever since. As he looked at the robot, he wondered if the robot transformed into a dog just to lower his guard, and is it pretending to be hurt on purpose, trying to stir up sympathy? From its actions alone, the MC could tell it seemed like a young creature, one that didn't yet understand much. The little dog barked happily, wagging its tail with innocent excitement. Seeing that MC frowned in thought. How on earth did a creature like this escape from the lab and make its way all the way to the demon realm? MC looked at the food and said it seemed ready. He asked the little dog if it wanted some too. The dog barked happily in response. Cheon-dawoon picked up his chopsticks and looked at the food, while the little dog stared eagerly at the bowl, drooling with sparkling eyes. Cheon-dawoon looked down at the strange, bubbling dish filled with odd ingredients and wondered to himself if he should try eating it. He sat at the table, eating from the pot with his chopsticks, while the little dog happily munched on its own share from a plate beside him. As he tasted the food, his eyes widened in surprise, the flavor overwhelming him. Beside him, the little dog tilted its head in confusion, still chewing, while the Cheon-dawoon's thoughts echoed. This taste is... A memory of the past surfaced in his mind. He recalled sitting on the floor with his friends, all gathered around a steaming pot of ramen. Their faces were full of joy as they laughed and chatted. Cheon-dawoon slurped the hot noodles, sweat running down his face, his cheeks flushed, and steam rose around him as he struggled with the heat, but his expression showed pure enjoyment. Cheon-dawoon smiled softly as he tasted the noodles, thinking to himself that this was how it used to taste. In that moment, he remembered the ramen he had eaten when he was just 7 years old. While the sun set behind the mountains, shadows stretched across the forest. From within the trees, Cheon-dawoon's faint voice echoed just one word: delicious. Afterward, Cheon-dawoon stood with his hands on his hips, looking at the dog. He told it that if it was done eating, it could leave since he needed to clean up. The dog then turned and began walking away, while limping on its one foot. Seeing that Cheon-dawoon pointed out that the dog had been limping on its left foot earlier. The dog froze in shock, realizing it had been caught. With a sheepish look, it quickly changed the lead it was limping and walked away, while Cheon-dawoon watched with a knowing smile. Then Cheon-do went to a waterfall. After finishing the dishwashing, he wondered if he should start the laundry next. As he scrubbed clothes by the water, he thought about how he didn't have good memories when it came to pollen. Still, he knew he couldn't keep living in only leather clothes forever. With a small sigh, he reminded himself that he wasn't a caveman. He thought carefully to himself that if he hit the clothes too hard with the stick, they might tear. So, he decided to strike gently while washing them. But despite his earlier thought of being gentle, he ended up striking the clothes with little too much force. The ground cracked, rocks flew, and the impact shook the riverbank, leaving him shocked at what just happened. The stick slammed into the ground with overwhelming force, leaving cracks and debris scattered everywhere. He stared silently at the destruction, speechless at his own strength. He cleared his throat and tried to stay calm. Though one cloth had destroyed, he reassured himself that it was fine, because there was still one more left. But he narrowed his eyes and looked in his side in confusion. This time, that little robot had changed its form into a rock. He wondered to himself why that little robot kept following him around. He remembered that, while he was eating ramen and washing the dishes afterward, the strange little robot appeared again, floating nearby as if it was watching him. Even when he stopped to admire the flowers that looked like forsythia, the little robot appeared once again. It changed its form and came closer, but it never really did anything special, just followed quietly. The little robot, disguised as a log, suddenly froze in surprise when a bee flew close to its face, making it flinch with wide eyes. It panicked as a bee buzzed near it. Terrified, it shouted, "Bee!" and ran away as fast as it could, clearly frightened by the tiny insect. The little robot screamed that it hated bees, Watching its reaction, it seemed like its mental age was no more than that of a child under 5 years old. The little robot spoke in a mechanical and clumsy manner, its words stiff and unnatural, making it clear that it wasn't fully developed in how it communicated. Cheon-du realized that the young chimera had been forced to have knowledge injected into it. Because of this, it showed clumsy behavior and odd reactions, which were common side effects in young chimeras. Cheon-du looked at the flowers and commented, though a bit awkwardly, that the forsythia flowers were pretty. He acted as if he didn't see the little robot. Little robot peeked from behind the flowers, watching shyly. Then something later Cheon-du let out a sigh, realizing that doing laundry was harder than he expected. Still, he held up the clean, shining shirt with a small sense of accomplishment. He looked at the freshly washed shirt in his hands, and felt relieved. At least he had managed to save this one. He noticed the shirt looked a bit too small for him to wear. Since he had washed it so carefully, it felt like a waste. Deciding not to throw it away, he hung it to the side. Then, he thought to himself that it was time to go check on the mandragoras. While he goes to check on them, the little robot, disguised as a rock, stayed silent, only its glowing eyes showing any sign of life. The little robot grabbed the wet shirt, thinking that since the man wore clothes, it should too. The little robot put on the wet shirt and said proudly that it also wore clothes, trying to imitate the man. The little robot happily declaring that it now belonged to him. He stood proudly, glowing with excitement. Golden light surrounded the creature as its form began to change. Shiny, wavy brown hair appeared, glowing beautifully in the transformation. The golden light continued to glow as the transformation went on. From within the shining clothes, a human hand appeared, clenched tightly into a fist. The transformation was complete. The small robot now stood in a full human form, with long brown hair flowing behind and fists resting proudly on its hips. It felt perfect, as if this form was its true self. On the other hand, Cheon-du looked at the little mandragoras in concern. They kept acting weak, their leaves drooping as if they were wilting. Their roots also looked dry, making him wonder why they kept ending up like this. He found it strange, as he was sure he had pulled out all the weeds when preparing the field. While working, he suddenly noticed something unusual and muttered, "What's this?" As he tilled the soil, all sorts of things started coming out of the ground. He realized he should have been gentler while working through it. Shocked, he thought about how he had almost hurt the little mandragoras by mistake. He thought about making a proper vegetable garden in that spot. Estimating the size, he wondered if an area as big as his house would be enough. Just then, he noticed something appear behind him. He looked back and saw a young girl with long, flowing hair peeked out shyly from behind a tree. Her bright golden eyes widened with curiosity as she softly greeted, "Hello." Cheon-du looked surprised, immediately recognizing that it's the little robot. He thought to himself, "This time it's a girl. Is she finally talking to me?" Gathering himself, he responded softly, "Yes, hello there." The little girl looked at the wooden house with hesitation and asked softly if it belonged to him. Cheon-du simply replied with a calm, "Yes." The little girl nervously asked if he was a native of the area. Hearing her question, Cheon-du smirked slightly and thought to himself whether he should tease her a little. Cheon-du said yes and asked her which tribe she belonged to. Surprised and nervous, the little girl stammered, repeating the word tribe in confusion. The girl nervously pointed far away, claiming she came from across the waterfall, a very distant place that he wouldn't be able to find. Cheon-du thought for a moment and asked if she was from the coconut tribe, since they lived near the waterfall. The girl quickly nodded, flustered but determined, and insisted that he was correct. She claimed that she came from the coconut tribe. Cheon-du noticed the outfit and pointed out that it looked like his. The girl quickly explained, flustered, that in her tribe, whoever picks something up owns it, so the clothes were hers now. Cheon-du, amused, simply agreed and told her she could keep it. The girl let out a happy squeal. Cheon-du asked the girl what brought someone from the coconut tribe to this place. The girl, looking nervous, admitted that she had been kicked out of her tribe. Then, gathering her courage, she said she had a request for him. The girl shouted nervously, her face red with determination, "I want to live here too. Please, I hope you'll let me stay." She bowed her head deeply, showing her desperation as Cheon-du looked at her in surprise. The girl's eyes widened nervously and she stammered, "Here there are no bugs." Her face showed a mix of worry and desperation as she tried to explain her reason. The girl nervously fiddled with her hands and said softly, "And there's a house too, so it seems safe." She spoke timidly, trying to justify why she wanted to stay. The girl explained shyly, "That's why I want to live here." Hearing this, Cheon-du closed his eyes with a calm expression and thought to himself, so she just needed a place to rest after all. He agreed and said, "All right, but if you want to stay here, you must do your share of work." The girl's face lit up with excitement as she clenched her fists happily. Understood. Just tell me what to do, she replied eagerly. Cheon-du explained, First, I need to till the vegetable patch. Can you help with that? I need to make a new home for the mandragoras. The girl eagerly grabbed the tool and declared with confidence that she would handle it, proudly saying she was strong. The girl shouted with determination that she was confident in her strength. With incredible power, she charged forward, tearing up the ground and sending dirt and rocks flying everywhere. Cheon-du watched her run with overwhelming strength, realizing she had no intention of hiding who she really was. He thought to himself that maybe it was because she had only ever lived in a lab, and so she didn't understand how a normal child was supposed to act. Cheon-do introduced himself and asked the girl for her name. She froze for a moment, startled, and nervously repeated the word, name, as if unsure how to respond. The girl thought to herself that she didn't have a name. She decided she would make a new one, choosing it based on the pretty flower she had once seen. The girl raised her hand proudly and announced with a bright smile, My name is Kim Nari. Cheon-do tilted his head and asked, Forsythia. The girl stomped her foot angrily and shouted, It's Kim Nari. Then few minutes later little Nari proudly announced that the work was all done. Cheon-do observed and commented that it was finished quickly. A stone fence, carefully made by Cheon-do, surrounded the tilled patch of land. Then he planted the mandragoras there. Little mandragoras jumped around happily with bright smiles, clearly excited and full of energy in their new home. Cheon-do watched them and thought he should have tilled the field more carefully. Meanwhile, Kim Nari stayed quiet, simply observing. Cheon-do suddenly turned his head, sensing something unusual. His expression sharpened as he clearly noticing something that caught his attention. Little Nari suddenly burst into tears, her eyes filled with sorrow. Cheon-do looked at her in surprise and asked why she was crying. Sniffling, she admitted that seeing the mandragoras reminded her of her lost friends, and the memory overwhelmed her with emotion. Cheon-du looked at her with surprise, thinking to himself, Friends? There's no way she could have had something like that in the lab. He couldn't believe her words, feeling puzzled by what she meant. Just then, little Mari's eyes widened in shock as a loud, terrifying noise echoed around her. A tear rolled down her cheek, and she gasped in fear. Dark shadows spread across the sky, surrounding the area where the small house and vegetable patch stood. Cheon-do calmly told little Nari not to be too surprised, explaining that the frightening noise was just monsters hunting each other, a common sound in this place. Little Nari, trembling and crouched on the ground, nervously admitted that before coming here, she had seen a monster that looked like a chick, and it seemed like several monsters were attacking it. Hearing that, Cheon-du widened his senses and calmly confirmed, It seems so. Little Nari trembled as she listened, her voice filled with worry. She said it sounded like the creature was in pain and must be hurting. She added that it seemed to have been bitten. Cheon-do, standing calmly beside her, explained without emotion that the creature would soon be eaten, for this was the demon realm after all. He asked her perhaps she saved that monster. Hearing that, little Nari clutched her head. Trembling, she shook her head and cried out in despair, insisting that she couldn't save monsters.